Supposedly, India has pledged to cease importing Russian oil. How are you going to enforce that? Because we're talking about, does that include third-party traders, blended cargo, ship to ship, ghost ships? How are you going to enforce that?
Well, fortunately, I won't be in the enforcement business. That will be, I think, probably my DOW colleagues will be thinking about, ships that are traveling around. But I think.
But then maybe the question for you is, how are you going to measure it?
Yeah, I don't know the details of how that's going to be worked out. I'm happy to stay in touch with you about it. But the Indians have been reducing their purchases of Russian oil and diversifying away, which is what we wanted them to do. And they've actually been buying more U.S. energy, and that's, I think, a promising possibility is to substitute some U.S. energy for the...
Donald Trump's statement that India agreed not to buy Russian oil. I haven't heard anything about that from anyone else, including from Prime Minister Modi or any other Indian counterparty.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go to Russian oil because the sale of Russian oil continues to fund the Ukraine war. Let's just be honest. So if supposedly India has pledged to cease importing Russian oil, how are you going to enforce that? Because we're talking about, does that include third-party traders, blended cargo, ship to ship, ghost ships? How are you going to enforce that?
Well, fortunately, I won't be in the enforcement business. That will be, I think, probably my DOW colleagues will be thinking about, ships that are traveling around. But I think.
But then maybe the question for you is, how are you going to measure it?
Yeah, I don't know the details of how that's going to be worked out. I'm happy to stay in touch with you about it. But the Indians have been reducing their purchases of Russian oil and diversifying away, which is what we wanted them to do. And they've actually been buying more U.S. energy, and that's, I think, a promising possibility is to substitute some U.S. energy for the Russian energy, but and buying from other places around the world too, of course.
Yeah, because we have credible reports. In fact, I don't think there's any question that Russia sold energy to India, who turned around and then exported it to Europe. So and that could be opaque to you. So I think this is important in our efforts to control the sale of Russian energy. Just making sure it doesn't go through a third party through India, even if it doesn't touch Indian pipelines or territory. I think that's an important issue in terms of cutting off the sale of Russian energy. China is also implicit in that. I got it, but India heretofore has been a major participant. Moving to China and India, obviously the two largest countries by population in the world, this newfound relationship with India, what is your assessment of how India is going to support our efforts, our increasing allied efforts around the Indo Pacific region to counter an increasingly aggressive China, setting trade routes aside?
Well, in India, they can be independent and stand up for itself and preserve its freedom of action, actually works to our strategic advantage and promotes our strategic interests, because what we're trying to do fundamentally is not to keep China out of the region, but to prevent China or any single hegemon from taking over or imposing coercive leverage on the region. So an India that is able to be independent and preserve its freedom of action takes a huge swath of the Indo-Pacific off of China's plate, and almost by definition prevents it from becoming the dominant power in the region.
Do you think that China has a true blue water navy?
They have blue water capabilities.
Okay. And I understand India is not a fan of the Belt and Road Initiative. How are they impacting that in the South Central Asia area?
Well, the Belt and Road is about getting enabling the Chinese to get influence over regional countries.
And how are they countering that?
Through development. Well, when India develops its economy and develops its infrastructure and develops its military independent of China and is able to to maintain its freedom of action, it prevents the Chinese from using the Belt and Road strategy in a big swath of the Indo Pacific.
So India is replacing the Belt and Road Initiative in some places?
Well, if Belt and Road doesn't take root in India, for instance, that means that there's a very large part of the Indo-Pacific that is not under Chinese sway.
So you're not saying they're impacting it beyond India?
I think at this point the goal is to ensure that India can stand up for itself, be independent, and of course it is. But the more wherewithal that it has economically, militarily, in terms of its defense, in terms of its technology, the better it is able to maintain its independence from China.
How about its actions in the Quad?
India has been an active member of the Quad, and we interact with India both bilaterally and in the Quad context. And that is, I think, a promising venue for us to cooperate and for us to cooperate with other like-minded states in the region.
Are they aggressive in the Quad?
I don't know if I'd say they're aggressive, but they are important members of the Quad.
Yeah, Secretary, I think India is an important ally in our move against China. So I'm trying to pick at your brain to see how they are supporting our broader global effort against China, and I'm not.
So I guess what I understand your question. I mean, what I'm saying is that they don't have to go far afield to support our strategic interests, and an independent, strong, prosperous India takes a big swath of the Indo-Pacific away from China, and that is actually a strategic win for us.
У нас нет оснований полагать, что договоренности...
We don't see any grounds to think that agreements reached at the top level, reached by governments of the Russian and the Indian government, are at any kind of risk. You mentioned Donald Trump's statement that India agreed not to buy Russian oil. I haven't heard anything about that from anyone else, including from Prime Minister Modi or any other Indian counterparty. Only recently, India is a BRICS chairman, and they had a meeting of BRICS Sherpas in India. And Minister Jaishankar spoke there, and in his introductory remarks, he said that energy security will be a priority consideration for BRICS countries and for BRICS during India's presidency, and there were no signals that any bans will be observed. Yes, everyone has confirmed that the tariffs faced by Indian goods have been lowered from 25% to 17%, while American goods will face zero tariffs coming into India. We see that as a matter of the bilateral relations between our privileged strategic partner and the United States. So once again, I don't believe there is any reason to think that our agreements are not observed by any of the parties. And that also includes strategic cooperation in humanitarian affairs and any other sectors. All of that is regulated by the relevant documents signed by our countries. As to migration, it's a relatively new area of cooperation between us. And we assumed that both countries have it in their interests that Russian laws are observed and that all of the agreements are honored
декабре только состоялся
So,
очередной саммит.
we had a summit in December
Договоренности,
between
которые
Russia and India,
подтверждают
and all of the agreements
внедрение
reached during that summit
обозначенного документа
testify to our commitment to deepen our privileged strategic partnership.